Hello and welcome back to the channel. Yes, you can. My name is Hannah. My mission here on the channel is to empower the everyday individual with their home improvement projects. Quick reminder, make sure that you are checking your local ordinances before starting any home improvement project to ensure that if there are any restrictions around what projects can be done as someone who isn't a licensed electrician, which I am not a licensed electrician. And I do want to give a couple quick things as we get started with this second video in our series on changing light switches and outlets. We are going to be going through the tools that will be helpful as you start this project. When I was getting started and planning to begin, I purchased my supplies and my tools and felt ready to go. And then the very second one that I was working on, so it didn't take very long, I realized I need more tools. My goal with this video is to help prevent that from happening to you. I'll be sharing the tools roughly in order of importance, though I will say that some of the tools are pretty level in how important they are, so that will be relative. Also, I will be sharing the links to the tools in the description to this video. However, quick caveat to that, there are some tools that I was given, that I already had, etc. And so I will try to find as close as possible a tool to the ones that I'm showing, that though they may not all be the identical one. The first tool that I want to talk about is actually not something that I can physically hold on to and share with you. However, I am starting with it because I believe that it can make or break your project. The tool that I am talking about, I'm going to label it a growth mindset. The words that you tell yourself, whether it's out loud or in your head, are so important as you start, as you're working on the project. At any point, it is critical that you are focusing on the progress you're making, the steps you are taking, and that you don't discount that you have the ability to learn this. Doing an electrical project is not just limited to a certain kind of person that can do that. Just a very short while ago, it felt very out of reach for me, and I had no idea about the terminology or the tools required or anything that went into it. So I encourage you to think of each step on the process as one more stepping stone to being able to master this skill. My background is in health and wellness coaching, and so I could go on and on about that, but it could really take up an entire video. So I will spare you that, and we will move on to the next tool. The next thing that I want to discuss is actually a set of two different things. They didn't come together, but they serve a similar purpose, yet are also distinct in their function. And what I'm talking about are the insurance policy that you have to make sure that you did indeed get the right breaker turned off at the electrical panel. The first one is a non-contact voltage tester, and I'm going to turn it on so you hear a little bit of a beep. And I actually didn't hear the beep that time. Typically it does beep when you turn it on. So if there is no electricity detected, it will be green and you won't hear any sound. However, if it does detect electrical current, it's going to turn red and you will hear a beeping, like a continuous beeping. When we get into the demo, we will be utilizing this, and this is something both for outlets and light switches that you can use. And it is helpful when you are using this tool to not just trust that it's working, even if you see the green, but to put it near something, again, safely, that you know there is current flowing through, to just double check that it is working. I'm going to turn it off so you'll hear that beep. The other one, it's going to serve a very similar purpose, but this is specifically a tool that you can use for outlets. So if you have it plugged in to the outlet and turn off the right breaker, There are 3 different lights across the front. They should all be turned off as they are right now. And then once you change the outlet, you can put it back in and turn the power or turn that breaker back on again. And there is sort of color combinations that are displayed on the front to ensure that you have the wires not just connected, but connected to the right screws, connected as they should be. And it just is a great way to double check. Happy to say that every outlet I changed the first time had the right combination of colors at the front. And then there's also a button for testing GFCIs, which we'll talk about that in our next video on different scenarios to the normal that you'll run into. Not that a GFCI is not normal, but just when we looked at in our first video on outlets and light switches, the GFCI is, you're not going to have them on every one throughout your home. So typically there'll just be a few, tending more often to be in bathrooms and kitchens. All right, next tool is a screwdriver. Now I will say, for those of you who maybe have done other projects, there are specific screwdrivers for electrical projects. I have seen that in videos that I've watched. However, I use just a basic one. This one does have the flathead as well as the Phillips that you can switch that. It has a couple different sizes within it. So this is all I used. If you also had a drill, that would make it a little bit faster, but just sort of a basic screwdriver is what I use. So I just want to be transparent and knowing that you don't have to have something really fancy either. Okay, next one we have, this is a wire stripper and a wire cutter. Both pieces of that are something that I used a lot, especially when switching from something that is back wired to side wired. We'll look at that more in the next video as well, but for starters, or to give you a high level overview of it, most of the wire that you will be stripping will be either 12 or 14 gauge. On this wire stripper, up here at the top, and you won't really be able to see it, but it does indicate. So for 12 gauge, you put it here at this point. For 14 gauge, you put it here, and then hold down, pinch, and be able to pull that wire off. There also is a wire cutter. So there is a way to be able to get the wires to release from them being back wired, but occasionally, or actually I'd say quite a bit, just getting them to release, it can be hard to try to maneuver and hold your hand in a certain position. So if there was enough wire to work with, I would just cut it. So super helpful tool, and this is one of those that I did not have right away, and soon discovered that I absolutely needed it. Next up, we have some needle nose pliers. I have 2 different sizes, and I do use both of them for different things. So we'll talk about the smaller one first, especially as I'm positioning the wire around the screw on the side of the outlet or the light switch, just to be able to get it nice and close. I'll sometimes use the small needle nose pliers. This larger one, again, you could use it for that. Specifically, I purchased this one for one of the scenarios. Again, we're going to look at it more in the next video, of what's called a switched outlet, or an outlet controlled by a light switch. And in order to get that outlet to work as it should and be controlled by the light switch, there's a tab that you need to break off on the outlet. And so the small needle nose pliers just did not work, but this one gives you some more power, and it worked, it worked great to be able to get that tab off. Next up, we have a flashlight. Pretty self-explanatory. Think of why you need it, especially in spaces where there is little to no natural light and you're turning off the breaker with the power that gives you the light for that room. Want to make sure that you have something that you can use to give you that light. I also had someone mention a headlamp. I did not use that, but if you have one, I think that probably would be pretty handy. Next thing is a wrench. I use this very little, but occasionally, here and there'd be some screws that got stripped. So I needed to pull those out and get a new screw. So this was helpful in those situations. Okay, level. This especially for light switches where you have multiples. I'm not sure how they came up with this name, but 2-gang plate is 2 of them, 3-gang, 4-gang. Especially I have one, I think it's just one that has 4 of them. So being able to get it nice and level and not just eyeballing it, a level can be helpful in those circumstances. I didn't actually have a level when I was working on that 4-gang plate, but I know that looking back, it would have been helpful to be able to have that. Okay, scissors, just sort of basic as you're taking things out of packaging. It can be helpful to have sort of miscellaneous things. And then the last tool that I'll talk about, I also have seen, I'm not even exactly sure what the name of this tool is, but for getting those wires to release from the back of an outlet. There is the teeniest little hole. I've also seen a small screwdriver used. So you press it into that teeny hole and the wires are supposed to release. Now, sometimes it's hard, again, to get the right positioning. So I did not always use this. Sometimes I would just use the wire cutter and cut it off and then restrip it. But this was something, again, if you're wanting to get those wires to release, small screwdriver, something that you can just stick in a teeny hole. And that does it for the tools that you will need for your electrical project, specifically with outlets and light switches, changing those out. If you have a tool that you have found helpful, maybe it's a specific brand or it's a tool that I didn't happen to include in this video, please share that in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you back here in the next video on the channel Yes You Can.